A map? A map of Great Britain with England, Scotland, and Wales. Why would I start with that? Because I'm going to speak about English. You can see where English is on the Indo-European family of languages tree, what language it's more closely related to, and what languages it is less closely related to. English, of course, has become the world's language. There's almost no place you go in the world where you cannot find somebody who speaks English. English is part of the Indo-European family, the Germanic branch, and the West Germanic group. However, prior to the Roman era in Great Britain, the people who lived on the island of Great Britain were Celtic peoples, and they spoke Celtic languages, those languages that I spoke about recently with regard to preservation, like, for example, Irish, Scottish, and Welsh. Then about 2,000 years ago, the Romans arrived, and the Romans controlled the southern two-thirds of the island of Great Britain. Keep this in mind. What language did the Romans speak? That would be Latin. Exactly right. So you had languages and people bumping into each other. What is typically going to happen? The languages are at least a little bit going to begin to blend together. The Anglo-Saxon invasions began about 500 AD. These were Germanic-speaking peoples. They included the Jutes, the Angles, the Saxons, the Frisians, and the Franks. This is a reason I put Anglo-Saxon in quotes, because it wasn't just Angles and Saxons. It was all of these people. Where did they come from? Well, the Jutes, the Angles, and the Saxons all came from the area in and around modern Denmark. Then the Frisians and the Franks came from what would be today modern Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, and France. And then they invaded the southern part of the island of Great Britain and eventually took that area over. When they did, they brought their languages with them, which meant those languages were now bumping into the languages that were previously there, which of course meant Celtic languages and then a little remnant of Latin. The Norman invasion of England was conducted by who? Do you know who the Normans were? They were the French. Guess which language they spoke? That's correct, French, although Old French, but they spoke French. That occurred in 1066. It was the last successful invasion by a foreign power of the island of Great Britain. But they brought French in, which means they were once again kind of reintroducing a Latin-based Romance branch language. So you can see what's happening. All of these things are colliding, and they're going to make what is modern-day English. Perhaps the most famous artifact of the Norman invasion is what's known as the Bayou Tapestry, which you can go and see in Bayou, France. At one point in my life, I studied Latin on my own, and I could actually read this at one point. I'll try and do it for you, okay? Don't laugh. Well, I can't hear you anyway. Ha ha. So, Willem venit Bagius, ubi Harold sacramentum fecit Willem Duci. like that. Which means William has come to Bayou, where Harold swears an oath to Duke William. Okay, that's probably the most famous part, or one of the most famous parts, of this very, very famous thing, the Bayou Tapestry, which is written in Latin. Okay? But that goes through the Norman invasion beginning in 1066. The major linguistic contributions to English, again, I have this in quotes because of the way English has evolved over time, include these: Greek, Romance languages based in Latin, and Anglo-Saxon languages. Greek accounts for about 10 to 12% of the words that we use in English. Now, as it says there, these are specialized words that are used mostly in math and science, but they're pretty common words. I'll give you some examples. That includes things like atmosphere, chromosome, genome, photograph, thermometer. Have you heard those words before? They all come out of Greek, but they are now incorporated completely and totally into the English language. And then with regard to the words that come from Latin and other Romance-based languages like Spanish, Italian, French, Romanian, and Portuguese, that's about 55% of the words in English. Yeah, we call English a Germanic language, but the reality is much of the language comes from other branches. How do you like that? And this is a lot of technical, sophisticated words that are used in formal settings, as it says there, and literature and textbooks. It's things like these. See if you've heard any of these words. Advocate, audience, commitment, contradict, corruption, disruptive, expedite. We're always talking about that when we're getting something from Amazon. I want to expedite it. Extracted, instructor, like what I am. Perspiration, like what I'm doing right now. Preventive, retract, survival, tenacious. All of those words are Romance-based words. And then the Anglo-Saxon words tend to be relatively short, common, everyday, down-to-earth used words. Things like bird, blood, cry, ditch, girl, grave, jump, laugh, mother, mouth, run, wash. How do you like that? So this is what this language is. It's really a wacky amalgamation of languages all glued together into this thing that we call English. Look, during the British colonial era, that wacky language is able to spread. You can see this is the extent of British colonial possessions. Wherever the British went, they brought their language because the British were really not so much about spreading their religion or creating brand new people. That isn't what they were about. The British were about making money. It was about commerce. And in order to have successful commerce, you have to be able to speak the same language. So wherever they went, they propagated their language. So through British colonialism and imperialism, and then American ascendancy in the 20th century, the English language became the world's language. It's really the world's lingua franca in a lot of ways. Remember, lingua franca is a common language. Usually it's an imported language. Imported. Brought in from another place. And it's used for business, the government, and the media. So it's used in commerce. It's used in air navigation today. International air navigation is all done in English. Have you ever noticed that you're flying at 35,000 feet, not 8,221 meters? This is because of our system. Shipping and education. And I mean throughout the world, it's used for these things. What benefits does the English language have in terms of its ability to propagate, besides the obvious that very powerful people went and conquered other people and forced the language on them? But today, what benefits does it have? Well, it's certainly not spelling, right? Didn't we go through this before? English is not a phonetic language. But the sounds are not difficult to make. If you ever watch Charlie Brown cartoons, you'll see that when adults speak, they make this womp, 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 womp. That's kind of the way English sounds. It's not a complicated language to make sounds in. It's mostly kind of nasally and spoken out of the front of your mouth. We don't rrr in English. We don't make in English. We don't make in English. We don't make any of those sounds in English. We have very, very simple sounds. And actually, the grammar and conjugation is not too bad. In English, basically, it's noun, verb. That's it. Whatever you want to put around that, you put it around. But essentially, the order is just noun, verb. Everything else can go wherever it feels like it's going. And then conjugation is pretty simple. Think about the verb to go in English. I go, you go, we go, they go, everyone goes. Very simple conjugation. And most verbs in English work just like that. Try that in Spanish, right? Where it's yo voy, tú vas, usted va. Nosotros vamos, ustedes van, right? Well, what would that be? That would be yo voy, tú voy, usted voy, nosotros voy. I know the people who speak Spanish are probably cracking up at that because it doesn't make any sense. Well, in English, the nice thing about it is the conjugation of the verbs is relatively easy. And it's a very adaptable language. It absorbs words. We do not have an Académie Française cleaning English out. It just absorbs words. And it accommodates accents. How many times have you seen two people who do not speak English as their first language speaking to each other in different accents, but speaking English to each other, and they understand each other? I mean, let's face it, at the end of the day, if I say, tomorrow I go to the store, you know that I'm talking about a future event. If I say today I go to the store, I'm talking about I'm doing it right now, or I just did it, or I'm going to do it. Yesterday I go to the store, you know that I mean yesterday I went to the store. But people can understand it. It's kind of a weird language in that way. And English is also the most wordy language on earth.